All right, episode 768 with Leslie Kenny from Leslie's New Prime is brought to you by the Promolife Ozone Generators, Lifeblood's Methylene Blue, Surthrival's Colostrum, and the Relax Far Infrared Sauna, as well as our newest patrons, our VIP members, Craig, Courtney, Irma, and Wesley. Our newest premium patron members, Mallory and Paul, and our newest basic patron members, Esther, Daniel, and Jean. Thank you so much for supporting the show. All right, welcome, my friends, to episode 768 of Extreme Health Radio with Leslie Kenny. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking with her about oxidation, gray hair, aging, anti-aging, longevity, all that kind of cool stuff. And we have a bunch of listener questions to get to as well from our premium Patreon members, which we'll get to. But I hope you guys enjoy the show. This was a really fun one. I had a great time speaking with her on and off the air. And she was also kind enough to give us a coupon code as well, because a lot of the times people have products they sell and stuff like that. So there's a coupon code if you're interested down below. But we talked a lot about oxidation. We talked about gray hair, and we talked about her story of getting into health and her story with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, and how she overcame that, along with different things about, related to gray hair and how to reduce oxidation inside the body. And we talked obviously about her product called Promolife, which is really cool too. So hope you guys enjoy the show, and let's get on with the episode. All right. Welcome, my friends, to episode 768 with Leslie Kenny. We are here. We're going to talk today about the connection to oxidation, gray hair, and aging. And I was doing some research for one of our Patreon protocols, and I stumbled across Leslie's videos, and she's the founder of Oxoford Healthspan. She's originally from Southern California. She's a Harvard Business School graduate, but in her 30s, she was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. And the doctors told her that 5 years is what they got on lupus. And so at that time, she started doing a lot of research and wanted to learn natural ways to heal and to recover. So I wanted to have her on to introduce her and her work to you guys. So welcome to the show, Leslie.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one because, like I said, I stumbled across your videos, and you just have a really great way of explaining the research and showing the studies, and and you talked a lot about oxidation and gray hair and all of that stuff. And so I really was taken by all of the content on your YouTube videos, and then I explored more your website and your supplement line, which we'll talk about. But in one of the videos, you mentioned spermadine and spermine, and we'll get into that. But that inhibits 7 of the 9 major hallmarks of aging, which is interesting, right?
Well, so excitingly, the paper that talked about the original 9 hallmarks of aging, which are the pathways down which we age, that was recently updated just 2 months ago. And there are 3 additional hallmarks added. Things that you won't be surprised by given the work that you do: leaky gut or gut dysbiosis, inflammation, and dysfunctional autophagy or cell renewal and recycling. And spermadine actually inhibits 75% or 9 out of those 12 hallmarks, which is quite exciting. So in addition to those 3 that I just mentioned, it also helps with things like stem cell and mitochondrial dysfunction, epigenetic changes, shortened telomeres, impaired protein folding, things like this. And They all have to do with how quickly we age, but they also have an impact on how we present outwardly. So the visual representation of our biological age. And I think it's not exactly surprising that how healthy we look on the outside can sometimes be a proxy or an indicator of how healthy we are on the inside. It's not always the case. It's not 100% correlation, but there is something to it. And my sense is that it has to do with the body saying, right, I've had plenty of resources to deal with all of the needs to keep this organism healthy on the inside. And I've got all this material left over. So let's spread it around and let's use it on things like hair, skin, and nails. And that is what I think is actually happening.
That's interesting. Yeah. So in reading your bio, because you don't talk about it too much in your videos, and by the way, if you guys want to check out Leslie's videos on YouTube, she's got some great content, and I'll put a link to that. But you refer to it a little bit, but your story of rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. So what was the deal with that? What happened there?
Well, I noticed one day that I was having trouble using scissors and turning doorknobs and faucets. So took myself to the doctor, who said, I have what I think feels like arthritis, but I definitely am too young to have this, but it feels like it. So could you please investigate? Did various blood tests, and the doctor called, didn't give me the results over the phone, asked me to come in person.
That's always a red flag, right?
That's the red flag. Yeah. Gave me the gold star for being correct about self-diagnosing that it was a type of arthritis. So rheumatoid arthritis, which is the autoimmune kind of arthritis. And then said, in addition, you've got this other thing called lupus. So for the rheumatoid arthritis, you can have these drugs, which are immune suppressants, and you just inject them, and you're going to get them on a subscription basis forever, essentially. Forever.
Yeah.
But for lupus, there isn't anything. And I was thinking there should be a box for that. So when you're a patient and you are presented with a diagnosis, but there is no cure or there's no treatment, you're dumbfounded, because we are raised to imagine that we can outsource all of our health problems to our healthcare provider. This is just not true.
Crazy.
As patients, we have got to do all we can to meet our doctors halfway. They cannot do all of the hard work. We actually have to do the heavy lifting. Yeah. And in acute cases where you're in a car accident or you have a fall, they are very good with those things. But with chronic conditions such as autoimmune diseases, we have to really do the work. So having a doctor say there's no cure made me think, first, is the test wrong? Can I please retry the test? A do-over, right? Like in kickball or whatever you do on the playground. I want a do-over, right?
Yeah.
And number two, I'm going to research the heck out of this thing and throw the kitchen sink at it, which is what I proceeded to do. And discovered that both of these illnesses have inflammation as their root cause and an overactive immune system. So I thought, why don't I remove the triggers that are causing the inflammation and the overactive immune response, and then at the same time try and bring the immune system back into balance. This idea of immune suppression didn't really sit well with me, even though I did inject the drugs for a while. But okay, you're from Southern California. I'm from Southern California. Yeah. We go to the beach. I have always worn a bikini. I had track marks on my belly from all the bruises. You know, it's actually, even with a little diabetic needle, it is hard to inject that without getting a bunch of bruises. So I just thought, immune suppression and also the vanity, I don't like the look of that.
Yeah.
I just thought, what about just bringing the immune system back into balance so that it knows exactly when to go on high alert and when it knows not to attack itself, right? So we rely on the immune system to properly attack pathogens and viruses and things, but also to properly identify self from non-self so that you don't get this sort of friendly fire attack that happens with autoimmunity. And the research that I did led me to a novel treatment at the time called intravenous immunoglobulin.
Okay.
IVID. And
great.
I did 2 rounds of it. It was intravenous, took about 4 hours each time, cost $12,000 US for each one. The cost
Whoa.
now is between 30 to 90,000 US dollars, depending on where you are in the world. But it seemed to work. The combination of cleaning up my diet, getting rid of these allergens, sealing up the gut, and balancing the immune system seemed to do the trick. So when I went back to my doctor to retest, got the results back, went to see her, and she said, you don't have these things anymore.
Wow.
The penny dropped.
So prior to that, when you started treating yourself and then when you went to go get retested, did you notice a big change in how you felt? And that's why you went to go get retested to see if maybe it was gone?
I had already set up the test ahead of time because I just thought, what if it's a false positive, right? Mm-hmm. But I did notice that the pain in my joints was going away.
Interesting.
And so I was optimistic. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, I was doing everything else. Some things which we would say are a bit woo, like Mayan uterine massage. I was doing Reiki.
That's awesome.
Meditating. I was doing everything. I was tincturing, creating my own tinctures from roots. I was harvesting from the mountains. I was doing everything.
Hey, have you guys tried Sir Thribal's colostrum yet? If you haven't, you totally should. I love this stuff. What I love about it, it has lactoferrin in it, which is a really powerful iron chelator. It also has retinoic acid, which is real vitamin A, which helps load copper into ceruloplasmin. It helps to seal your gut lining, improving digestion. It contains all essential fats, sugars, and amino acids. It's non-GMO, organic, grass-fed, and it also has transfer factor and immunoglobulins in it, so it modulates your immune system. Great for gut health. There's 4 flavors: the original, vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate. I like the original myself. I add it to my smoothies, coffee, ice cream, pancakes, shakes. The kids love it. It's amazing stuff. Check it out on biochargeme.com.
But isn't that, Leslie, I feel like stuff like that is not the reason why we get sick, but I think ultimately when it comes down to spiritual, emotional connections to diseases and stuff, I really think that it's easy to go the pharmaceutical route, and that does work sometimes, but I think ultimately it's like God tapping us on the shoulder or whatever and saying, you know what, you need to have a life change. And so when someone changes every aspect of their life and their outlook and their, how they view things, I think that's where the real healing comes from, because there was probably healing in just you driving up to the mountains and carrying out that task. That by itself was probably healing, Yeah.
Well, I think there is definitely an effect. And we know this because if you do a clinical trial, you have to factor in placebo effect. Mm-hmm. And simply taking back my power as a patient and shouldering some of the responsibility for my health and saying, it's kind of up to me. I need to do this. Otherwise, change is not going to happen. I think that does have a role to play.
That's amazing. So cool. And so your doctor tells you that, says, hey, basically, we can't find any signs of lupus. The penny drops. And what do you do? Pick up the penny and walk out.
Well, of course, I said, would you like to know what I did? And she said, no. I'm sure that doctors actually get cases like me. Mm-hmm. Where the people are so desperate to share. Don't you want to know? Don't you want to help other people?
Right.
And of course, they don't have the time. They're on a schedule. They only have a certain amount of time. And probably some of it sounds like voodoo or something to them. Now, mm-hmm. She wasn't interested, but for me, I actually felt, gee, was I lied to? Did I have it? Or did I have it? You told me there was no cure, when actually I have just proven that there is a cure because I've cured myself. And what if I had decided that you were right and that I had 5 years left? Because I was in the middle of an IVF round. So it was my 5th IVF round. I was using donor eggs.
Wow.
39 years old. as a woman, you're thinking, I don't have many of these chances left. And she said, I wouldn't do the IVF round. You have a good 5 years left. There's no point, basically, in trying to have kids.
She told you that?
Yeah, she said, I wouldn't do the IVF round. You have a good 5 years left. I think the only reason that she maybe told me about the 5 years was because I was actually going to so much trouble to get pregnant.
Right.
And she must have thought, what point is there to trying to do this? It's a waste of money, energy. And if you were to be successful, what would be the point in that? Mm-hmm. Right. So all of these things were going through my head. And I just thought, okay, clearly doctors are not always right. Mm-hmm. But we do put them on a pedestal. And that is a problem. It is a burden. We put that burden on them. Sometimes some doctors actually like to carry the mantle of all-knowing, all-seeing authority, right? But not all of them. And I realized then that when it comes to health, number one, we are far more capable than we give ourselves credit for. The body is a mystery. It's complex. It has an innate wisdom to heal itself. And if we can tap into that sort of divine knowledge, give the body all of the resources that it needs to heal, then it can go back to work at doing what it knows how to do best. And that's keeping the body in homeostasis or balance. It's far easier for the body to be in perfect balance than to let something slip. The body doesn't want for the body to be in a state of illness. It's much easier to be in a state of balance. Mm-hmm. So that was my realization, and also that doctors aren't gods.
Yeah. I think that's kind of just the way our culture goes, right? With media and programming and stuff, the guys in white lab coats and things. And, I have a lot of similar experiences talking with doctors, being there with my mom in the medical room, talking to the oncologist, and the way they use language is in my mind criminal, for them to tell you that you have a good 5 years left, like they're God or something. And the guy tells my mom, the oncologist, well, we're going to put you through 12 rounds of chemo and we're going to cure this cancer from you with chemo. And it's amazing the terminology they can use. Like, they get to use words like cure. We can't do that, It's so unfair.
Yeah. Or they use things like you have idiopathic infertility and you're thinking, oh my God, what is that? And it actually just means they don't know. But it sounds so fancy, right?
Oh my gosh.
It sounds so convincing and authoritative.
I know it does. And so when you were researching, so this happened and gave you a whole new outlook on not just, the issue your body was dealing with, but with life as well and the role doctors play. And so leading into what we're going to talk about in terms of oxidation, gray hair and aging and H2O2 and all these things, at that point, were you kind of leaving the doctor's office thinking to yourself, okay, I need to explore and get into this whole realm a little bit more and find out what, how oxidation occurs and the immune system and stuff like that?
Some of that was happening. And like you, I had, a very close relative who had cancer, and I took a year off from Berkeley to stay home and take care of her. This was my grandmother. So I was actually much more interested in investigating things like the Candace Pert book, Molecules of Emotion, thinking about the mind-body connection, and then looking at things like the Gerson therapy and the work of Max and Charlotte Gerson. That was really where I was at the time. It took me another, 10, 15 years until I then began to really get interested in learning more about inflammation and oxidative stress and the effects on the body. and going to, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, doing Dave Asprey's Bulletproof coaching course. That was I was I was the first cohort in Europe. So that's what it was called at the time. And then also doing a wonderful course with Rob Knight, who runs the American Gut Project. That's at CU Boulder and UC San Diego, where, simply looking at the role of the gut biome on health. And once I had done those things and then started meeting parents at the school gates, which you're about to do with your kids, finding out what these parents here in Oxford were doing. This is translational medicine central, essentially at the University of Oxford, meeting these fantastic bench scientists and saying, wow, you transcranial stimulation for alleviation of depression. That sounds great. I have some friends who could use that. So where do they buy this? Oh, no. I don't want to do anything. I'm not selling anything. I'm just doing research. I'm thinking, but you could have a great product there. Why don't you allow people to benefit from this? No. I just need to publish. And so I would say to all of these people, I think what you're doing is amazing. Let me help you either build a company or fundraise for you. And that's how I then got into Oxford science. And because I was only interested in regenerative medicine and not, say, pharmaceuticals, which are the bread and butter, really, of Oxford, because pharmaceutical companies have tens of millions of dollars that they can give to universities to support their departments, to pay for their labs, to pay for their postdocs, and to keep people paid on staff. And I wasn't interested in that. I just wanted things like stem cells and people looking at circadian rhythm and ketones and these types of things. And so I began to collect what I will call the orphan scientist at the University of Oxford. And through this and my work with one of the main venture capital funds here, I met a wonderful scientist named Katja Simon, and one of her researchers, Dr. Ghada Al-Saleh, and they were working on a polyamine, that just is a word for something made from several amino acids. This polyamine was called spermadine, and it was showing promise reversing immune senescence.
Interesting.
And basically bringing immune cells back online again. But in elderly mouse models.
So for people that don't know, explain what senescence is.
So senescent cells are essentially cells that they're no longer functioning properly. They're basically dead cells, and they're like zombies. And because of this state, they actually can leak out the contents of the cell themselves. So, pieces of dysfunctional mitochondria, organelles, these leach out of the cell and they begin to infect the other cells around them. And as a result of that, you might have healthy tissue, but if you start with some small number of senescent cells, eventually the population will become zombieized by these senescent cells. And with immune senescence, you have certain functions of immune cells. You want your immune cells to remember which pathogens you've seen and to say, oh, right, rhinovirus. I've seen that before. And the way that we fight that off is with some kryptonite and, some Vicks Vapor Rub. I don't know, I'm making this up. But basically, for every pathogen, your immune cells will say they've got a library and they have a way to fend off that pathogen. Now, with immune cell senescence, those immune cells become zombieized and they can't remember what to do. They have no idea what to do. And in fact, they actually make the other immune cells, the healthy immune cells around them, less functional. So the fact that this molecule was reversing immune senescence in elderly mice, so this means age matched to elderly humans, was very exciting. And one study that Katja did, and this was around 2014,
Wow.
she had two groups of mice. One was age matched to young people, one age matched to old people. And the flu vaccine here in the UK is a huge thing. There are lots of efforts to get all people over 60, 63 vaccinated for the flu. But interestingly, their antibody response is not very high. So they get this, and there's an expense to the taxpayer. But in fact, it is a question, how effective are they? So if you give these young mice and these old mice the flu vaccine and spermidine at the same time, Katja could show that the old mice had a much better antibody response than the young mice.
Interesting.
So
okay.
Raised antibodies, but the older mice had better results.
And both groups got the sharp thing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So both groups got exactly the same thing, but the older mice did better. And it is so tantalizing to think that we get better with age.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I wanted to tell you about sauna therapy. And I don't know if you guys do sauna therapy on a regular basis. I do. I've been doing so for 10 years. And the sauna that I love the most and have been using all this time is the Relax Far Infrared Sauna. And what I love about the sauna is that, A, it's cost effective. It doesn't cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 like most other saunas. It's portable, which means if you have a tight space, you can store underneath your bed. After each use, you can put it in the closet, or you can even loan it to a friend. It's very low EMF. It uses far infrared light, though, which helps to increase circulation, increase cardiovascular output, increase heat shock proteins, which has a direct effect on immune cell function. It also helps improving lymphatic drainage and, most importantly, sweating out toxins that you're exposed to on a daily basis. This is by far my favorite health piece of equipment I have in my home. I'll put a link to it on today's show page or on our store, biochargeme.com.
The hypothesis for why this might be the case is that an older person, or an older mouse in this instance, has seen a larger library of pathogens, and therefore just can, has more memory about these things and can fight them off better. So that was very interesting. And they did another study in human cells in a Petri dish, and that looked very good too. So I thought, okay, this looks quite promising. What are these polyamines? And when I did begin to look at spermidine, spermine, putrescine, which is a precursor, I noticed, number one, they have horrific names.
Yeah.
Number two, there were over 13,000 studies on these. Three, we did not know until recently that actually spermidine, one of its superpowers is that it triggers autophagy, or the cell's ability to renew and recycle. This work is so important that a Japanese scientist named Yoshinori Ozumi was awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine or Physiology in 2016. And it's since that time that more attention has been given to this idea of autophagy. Naturally, things like practices like fasting, or other ways to get to autophagy using hormetic stressors like sauna, which I know you're a big advocate of, or cold. You've got cold shock proteins, and this is another way to get to autophagy. More discussion around autophagy has been had recently, but people just didn't know that spermidine was one of the things that triggered this. It's so important to the human body, to the survival of the species, that it is, of course, in sperm. It's also in high quantities in breast milk. And it's in all plants, in particular in high quantities in the endosperm of plants, because it's needed for that seed to survive and grow. And babies, just like those seeds, also have extremely high quantities of spermidine, spermine, and putrescine. And this is because they also need to grow rapidly.
Interesting. And it's also in a lot of foods that not necessarily popular here in the West, but like natto and stuff like that, right? It's pretty high in that.
Exactly. So fermented foods do have higher amounts of spermidine. Natto, which is fermented soybean, is the highest source. Tempeh has some too. And then again, just, kimchi, sauerkraut, these will all have it. And mature cheese has it too. I guess then the issue is some people have an issue with histamine. Because anything that's fermented or aged, like cheeses, if you have an allergy to histamine, then that can be problematic. But we can also manufacture this in our gut biome throughout our lives. And as a matter of fact, if you take healthy 90-year-olds or those in their 90s, and you look at their spermidine content, it is the same as healthy 50-year-olds.
Really?
But exactly. It's so interesting,
Wow,
right?
That's so weird. Yeah.
If you look at 60-year-olds who are unhealthy, their levels are lower. And what we think is happening is that in these cohorts, so around in our 50s, the majority of us will still be healthy. But in our 60s, things start to go wrong. And so therefore you have more people who are alive, but you have greater numbers who are sick. I'm not going to say that there is a perfect correlation with, say, lower spermidine content, but it just so happens that they do have lower spermidine content. Then by the time you get to populations that have survived to their 90s, oh, this is very interesting. They happen to have higher spermidine content and they're still here.
Interesting. Yeah. So I wonder if there's a common or correlation, I should say, between not just the gut, but the gut bacteria and, the amount of flora in the gut and the amount of spermidine and the health of the spermidine that the gut does create.
There is. Yeah. And unfortunately, while things like broad spectrum antibiotics can be a blessing in an emergency situation, there is a knock-on effect in that they take out all populations of bacteria in the gut, both bad and good. And some of those good bacteria, which are responsible for manufacturing things like B vitamins or serotonin mimetics or insulin mimetics, some of those populations also manufacture spermidine and spermine. And they get indiscriminately wiped out by these treatments, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, and what's crazy too is when people take antibiotics, it's so what's the opposite of demonized, but it's so sort of normal in our culture to take antibiotics that people just take them like it's some other pill. It's no big deal. But we had a guest on our show years ago, and he was a former medical doctor, but he was saying that the human gut is supposed to have 1,000 different forms of bacteria, different kinds, not necessarily a total amount, just different species.
Yeah,
and he was saying that, and I think we're down to like 200 now. And we were talking on that show, is it possible to get some of these things back? And we're going back and forth on how to do that. But I mean, these things are not a big deal, right? These antibiotics.
Yeah. No, it's quite a serious thing. Another thing, of course, is illnesses like leaky gut, candida, H. pylori, because when those colonies of bacteria outcompete healthy bacteria, that's also problematic too. And yet, of course, we know that if you've got H. pylori, the standard protocol for getting rid of that is the triple antibiotic protocol, which is that, again, do you want H. pylori? If it's really serious infection, you definitely don't want it because it is positively correlated, not just with stomach ulcers, but with stomach cancer. But there's a trade-off, right? And I heard you talk on your podcast on reversing gray hair and H. pylori about taking mastic gum, right? That's something you can do. There are other things you can do to try to get rid of the H. pylori. It doesn't like green tea, for instance. It doesn't like apple cider vinegar. So there are other things that we can do to try to treat it, though it's pretty insidious.
Yeah, and I was just reading something recently, a study on ozone therapy and ozonated water and H. pylori. And so it seems to me like, if a doctor told me I had that, I would just explore all these other options first, before taking a drug. I don't know, but that's just me.
Yeah, well, that's me too. And I think the important thing here too is to listen to your body and to know when something is not right and to address it early. And I can't stress that enough. The earlier you can catch something and address it, the better off you will be. Once H. pylori takes hold and is really quite far down the road, then it becomes much harder to do these other things. But, in traditional societies, we would have been eating things that would have fed the other populations of bacteria in the gut, so they had a chance to compete against H. pylori. Mm-hmm. And it's a commensal bacteria. We have evolved together with it, and it actually inhibits the gorge hormone ghrelin. So there is some benefit to H. pylori, but just not when it's out of balance. So it's that word again, balance, homeostasis. You have a little H. pylori, it has the benefit of, keeping you from gorging. You have too much H. pylori, you go out of the Goldilocks zone, and you have something completely out of control. And
it's crazy. It's so crazy how little we know about the human body, because that connection to ghrelin and H. pylori, there was research, I think, like 10 years ago that sort of brought this to light. And before that, it's my understanding, I could be wrong, but before that, we didn't know there was a connection or anything good about H. pylori. And then you realize people that are obese have very low levels of H. pylori because it doesn't stimulate that ghrelin chemical to tell them they're full and satiated. And so, like you said, there's this synergy. But it's crazy that, like, you were just talking a few minutes ago about something in 2014, and so much stuff, so much of all this information is still so new, right?
It's new, and it doesn't get out there. And that's why some of my colleagues, they're all academic colleagues, and myself founded the Oxford Longeivty Project, which is nonprofit, just to bring the leading bench scientists who are making these discoveries together with translational medicine clinicians, people who are saying, oh, that's a really good idea. Autophagy, how can I use that in the clinic with my patients? And so, we had Dr. Dale Brighteon on together with, a scientist who's looking at lysosomes and thinking about how those two fit together. We did the same thing with cardiovascular disease. We did it also with the immune system. We looked at fasting in women and how it's different. And, our next webinar is going to be on multiple sclerosis. So really looking at autoimmune conditions and how autophagy can be used to address some of these autoimmune conditions too.
So there's people that are listening right now thinking, oh my gosh, how do I get access to these webinars? So before we continue on, if someone's listening and they want to get access to these, how can they?
It's just free. It's oxfordlongevityproject.org.
Okay. And they can just join up there, and then you'll let them know via email. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And we have the old ones there, and it's, it is essentially me and three of my friends, Emeritus Professor of Physiology, Dennis Noble, who, is the first person to basically compute the rhythm of the human heart and then discovered the effect of adrenaline on the heart. And Sir Christopher Ball, who's a former Guinness world record holder for doing 10 marathons in 10 days after the age of 70, but he's also a triple bypass heart patient and a poet.
Wow.
And then Dr. Paul Chen, who's a local general practitioner and also has a PhD in oncology research. And he is half Japanese, so can see and read all of the Japanese research on things like immunotherapy. So we just being friends, I'm the patient. Sir Christopher and I are the patients, and it's sort of like, okay, you two are the geniuses. We need to get more of this genius material to doctors like Paul, and this needs to get out to patients faster. So that is really the point of the Oxford Longeivty Project.
That's awesome. So I titled this particular talk, The Connection Between gray hair and aging, I think it was. And so in terms of the excess production of H2O2, and I believe it's complex 4 or complex 5 of the cytochrome C oxidase of the mitochondria, instead of creating water, which is that fourth stage of water that people know about, instead of creating that, it creates hydrogen peroxide. And then in your videos, you talk about how, as a result of that and a lack of antioxidants, and that occurs to make that happen, that H2O2, the hydrogen peroxide, wants to come out of the body, right? And so as it comes out, it bleaches the hair. Is that generally the idea behind gray hair?
That is generally the idea. It is. And the other thing, I suppose, is when the hair follicle goes into the catagen or telogen phase. So these are the resting and the shedding phases where no pigment is made. So that can be slightly different. And that has more to do with, as you get older, do you have the capacity to keep the stem cell in the hair follicle, the epithelial stem cells, going? And
to increase the length of those phases, is that right?
Yeah, to increase the length of the anagen or growth phase, because as you have stated in your own podcast on gray hair, the anagen phase or the growth phase is the only time when melanin production happens. So it's really in our best interest to, if we can, for vanity reasons, we want the hair follicles to stay in that growth phase so that pigment happens. It's fascinating. There was a study that came out recently, and it was on hypopigmentation in the skin. How, sometimes as you get older, you might have noticed that you have these little white spots.
Yeah, I've been noticing those. Yeah.
Okay. And you've started to get a little bit of gray in your beard. These are actually related. These things are related.
Interesting.
They're related. Well, just think about it. Our skin and our scalp, this is not so different, right? I mean, obviously hair grows here, but it's still skin, right? Mm-hmm. And lower levels of spermadine and spermine in the body are correlated with hypopigmentation, and you can reverse it by increasing those things in the body.
Gosh, it's so multifactorial, because you have a really great video on like what causes gray hair, because you'll get people asking you like, what's the cause? And, a lot of times in the natural health world, people want to say, well, there's one cause of all disease, and, different people have different aspects of what that could be. But in your videos, you talk about like there could be 7 or 8 or 20 different causes, or a multifactorial approach to, some of all of those causing gray hair. And so it's hard to know what to really go after. But I guess that's where blood tests and hair mineral analysis and all that kind of stuff comes in, right? I am such a huge fan of ozone therapy. To me, having your own ozone machine for you and your family is like having a doctor, a hospital, and even an emergency room all in your own home. In my opinion, it's the single most important piece of equipment you can own. So what is ozone? Well, ozone is essentially a molecule with 3 oxygen atoms attached, and the synergy of what that does inside the human body is absolutely astounding. It is completely safe. It's been used since 1856 to disinfect operating room tables. It can be used topically for bacterial infections, or the V word, which we can't pronounce these days. It's antifungal, it's antiparasitic, it's anti-yeast. It activates both arms of the immune system. It can be used externally on non-healing wounds, on ulcers. It can be used rectally for systemic whole body treatments to improve liver function, to help prevent diseases. And it can be applied topically as an oil to the skin for virtually any skin condition. You can use it in saline water for eye drops. Some people breathe the gas through olive oil. You can do sinus, ear, rectal, and vaginal insufflations. You can even drink the water, which is what I do. Or you can use the water as a sanitizer for vegetables. You can spray it on your skin for any wounds. You can use it on yeast infections for your dogs and spray it on your plants. We've done both of those. You can even do full body ozone bagging or ozone sauna sessions using our relaxed far infrared sauna. And you can do injections with it, which is called Prolozone. I've had that done as well. Typically, IV is the standard, but it's been shown that rectal insulfations is about 94% as effective as IV therapies, minus the drive time, the money, the needle sticks in your veins. You don't want any of that. So my favorite machine is from Promolife. They use a cold corona discharge on their ceramic cells. They have adjustable ozone levels, which is really important for an ozone machine. They're made in the USA. They have free shipping over $99 to the continental United States, but they ship worldwide as well. They've been the industry leader since 1999. They have awesome customer service. They have a lifetime warranty, a 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you use our code EHR10, you'll get 10% off. So check it out on today's show page or on biochargeme.com.
Absolutely. And that is a first port of call, right? We simply cannot manage or treat what we can't measure. So let's do a full panel analysis of as many things as you can think of and really see what you're deficient in. I mean, who would have thought that low vitamin D would be correlated with premature gray hair? And yet, there are studies that show this. I have had viewers of my videos who have actually written in and sent images of them before and after they topped up their vitamin D.
I know, I've seen those. They're incredible.
Yeah, exactly. So it does, that's just one example. And I remember you saying, gee, it seems like people are going gray earlier. Well, do we spend time outside anymore? Do young people spend any time outside exposing their skin to sunlight? And if they do, are they doing it without sunblock? Because that's the only way they're going to be able to synthesize vitamin D in their skin. No, the vast majority of young people today spend time indoors on devices and they don't go out. 90 to 90% of our day is spent indoors, which means we're not giving our skin the chance to synthesize vitamin D. And it's no surprise to me that people are experiencing premature gray hair at possibly earlier ages or in greater numbers. That's just one factor. And we haven't even touched on the quality of food, the fact that people are eating much more processed food, which is devoid of nutrients, minerals, vitamins, antioxidants, polyphenols, things that they need, right? And that's even before we get to topics like Accutane, Roaccutane, and gray hair, premature gray hair, for instance.
Yeah, so it's interesting when the body is supposed to be making energy in the mitochondria, and it's producing, instead of like we mentioned before, that fourth phase structured water, instead it produces H2O2 as part of the breakdown. I've heard you answer people, and they would say is gray hair a sign that something is wrong with my body, or, that kind of a thing. And it kind of is, right? Because it's showing that the oxidative process inside the body, the internal rusting or the loss of electrons, is causing inflammation all throughout the body, right? And it just shows up as gray, but it means it's happening internally, right?
So I would never want to say to the wonderful silver sisters out there that gray hair, that I don't like gray hair. It can be a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. But is it an indication of something changing on the inside? It is.
It has to be, right?
And in particular with young people who get it, that's a very big deal. The Roaccutane stuff just astonished me. Once these videos went up, you have no idea the number of distressed 14 and 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds writing to me to say, I'm losing my hair and it's turning gray. The consistent factor across all of them was Roaccutane. And then once I looked up the contraindications and side effects for these drugs, I could see that in some of them, 13% of the people in trials that were using them were losing hair and getting gray hair. So it wasn't that they didn't know about it before they went onto the market. They did know about it. And so there's a very obvious link between, what we put into our bodies, the effects on the inside, and how we present on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And it can happen at extremely young ages.
And it's interesting because there are people that go gray earlier on in life. And it's, there's, it's a good thing in a sense that people can say, you know what, this is me aging. I'm fine with it, and not have to do all the plastic surgery stuff and and the altering, and not being sort of caught up in that whole mindset. And that's a good thing to have, to frame it in that way, and to age gracefully and be okay with your body as you age. And that's where we want to be anyway. But why not have that mindset, but also work internally and see if we can reverse some of these things, right? I mean, that's take the double approach.
Yeah, that's sort of how I feel. And I actually have, since the age of 39, I have done everything I can to stay in remission. So I am really slavish. When I go into airplanes, I bring my own food. I am that passenger who has all the little baggies with the things I want, my own tea bag, my own medium chain triglycerides, my own collagen. I bring everything. So I guess I would qualify as high maintenance there. I have never been interested in doing my nails, dyeing my hair, doing any of the face stuff, none of that. But what has happened is that as I have gotten older, and especially during lockdown, I suddenly realized, wait a second, all of the women that I'm seeing on the street who are my age, they all have the raccoon stripe. That's unusual. And they were all coming to me to say, oh, who's dyeing your hair? Right? Like, who's doing it? How can I get it?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, no, I'm not doing anything. So that's when I started putting these videos up, because I had so many friends who were like, tell us what you're doing. How is it that you don't have gray hair? At whatever age I was then, it might have been 54. Now I'll be 58 and I still don't have to dye my hair. I don't have to do keratin treatments. I don't have to do extensions. It is just what it is. I don't go to the effort to make this happen. I go to the effort to make my body healthy so I don't get lupus rheumatoid arthritis or have a flare-up of Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which I also had. I just want to stay healthier for longer. That's the whole point. And I think once you do that, then the body rewards you by, making the outside healthier too, as a result. No inflamed skin, no lines or marks on your nails, nothing brittle, and strong, healthy, kind of glossy hair, really.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a dual approach. I remember listening to Jim Rohn years ago. He's a great motivational speaker, and my jiu-jitsu coach gave me a whole 20-part series of his talks. And and he was talking about the importance of having multiple reasons for a motivation to do something. So, let's say it's working out, right? If your motivation is merely to lose 10 pounds, well, what do you do when you lose 10 pounds? Then you don't have to work out anymore. Well, if your motivation is to look good and then you get six-pack abs, then what do you do when you have the six-pack? At some point it stops. So he was saying have multiple reasons why you do the same thing. So, on a day where you have six-pack abs and you look great, or you lost 10 pounds and you look great, but it's raining and you have no motivation to work out, what's going to be that thing that gets you in there? And so I like having multiple reasons for taking care of yourself as well. And for you, it's kind of fun to see the gray hairs go away, but a deeper motivation for you is to prevent any of this systemic stuff from coming back. And it's cool to see the actual manifestation of that in healthy skin and healthy hair. So there's multiple layers of that. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And you can also sort of track your progress. So a lot of us have Oura rings and we're looking at our metrics on a regular basis, but your nails and your hair and your skin are like the rings inside a tree. And they sort of say, that indicate, was there drought? Was there too much, some other problem? And I happened to go through a really stressful period, probably 6 to 9 months ago. And I noticed that I was getting more gray hair. But at the same time, the ridges, I got ridges on my nails, which is very unusual for me. That is an indication of where the nails stop in a kind of panic. They stop growing and then they start up again. And you get these, these kind of horizontal ridges. And I realized my body is telling me that I need to take extra care because it's gone into kind of panic mode and has halted production of keratin in my nails. And it has also halted pigmentation in a few hairs here. So I always tell people, don't ignore these signs. They are an indication that something is happening internally, and they're like little red flags. And if we just heed them and give the body again what it needs, and maybe it is just taking a few extra minutes in the evening to use a gratitude journal, or taking a walk in nature, just so that we relax and calm down the parasympathetic nervous system, so that we don't raise cortisol, we don't raise adrenaline, we don't then have to deal with the hydrogen peroxide that bleaches the hair from the inside out. That is the cascade of events that I would like people to bear in mind when they see changes, these physical changes. Listen to them.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We had a guest years ago named an herbalist named Barbara Frank, and she was a really just a trip of a lady. Like, she was so bizarre, but really interesting as well. And on the show, she mentioned that the cause of gray hair is something called Demodex mites. Have you ever heard of this? Demodex mites. And she said what happens is that I'm going back maybe 3 or 4 years now, but she said something to the effect of they consume excess iron, and they live on the follicles in the hair and the scalp and near the eyebrows, and they consume excess iron, and their waste, I forget what she talked about being a part of the hydrogen peroxide, but yeah, it was really weird. I'd never heard of that before. Demodex mites, and I looked them up on Google Images, and they're these tiny little mites that live on people's scalps and in their hair and stuff. And she was convinced that was the cause.
Could be, I don't know, a cause. It might not be
a cause. Yeah,
right. I mean, I think that's the thing, is that gray hair is so complex, and the more that I dug into it, the more I realized that, boy, could be H. pylori, could be Candida, could be low B12. So I don't rule it out. It sounds like it's possible, especially if there is a hydrogen peroxide connection. Yeah. But that I did not come across. That's a surprise. I've learned something.
Yeah. I can send you the clip. I'm not sure if YouTube took it off, but I can send you the clip and kind of line it up to right where she says that.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
There's a fellow from Oxford, a medical doctor from South Africa, who is a Rhodes Scholar here, and he has gone to work for a company in Irvine, in your neck of the woods, and they are they have an eye drop that just gets rid of mites in the eye that are apparently connected with all sorts of vision problems. And I remember meeting him in Irvine and him telling me about this. And I said, I never heard of these mites before. And he said, by the age of, sort of 50, everyone will have them. I thought, this sounds terrible. But
sounds so weird.
Fine. Yeah. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility, given that he was telling me about this, and he's quite learned. So
yeah, it's really fascinating because, like, you have people that say things like that, and there's not really a consensus. There's not a lot of people saying what they're saying. And so you have to kind of look at that and you say, well, maybe they're an outlier, and maybe they're going to drive the research in a better direction. Yeah. Or maybe they're a fringe and they have no idea what they're talking about. And then they present you with information showing they're reversing the condition using their protocols. So then you kind of have to take all that into consideration and say, how does that really fit in with, the oxidative, that great paper, the oxidation theory of aging, or whatever it's called, and try to make something that works for you. But Yeah, it's so fascinating, all these aspects of why we get or present gray hair, whatever, you know?
Yeah. Well, what I think is most interesting about gray hair is that it's still possible to reverse even when you're older, and it's still possible to grow it even when you're older and you have been, bald there.
Wow.
And as we've had clients who have written to us, I'm not saying that you're going to get a thick, lush swathe of hair across the top, but one of our clients had that sort of monk's pate, where you just have hair around the edges, and had gone white when he was 40, and he's now 93. And his wife had given him the product. And now he's got this fuzz across the top, but it's really, it kind of looks like a very thin crew cut. But he's happy with this because he's
he's 90, right?
Yeah. And he didn't have anything. And so, instead of it being shiny and smooth, he's got this sort of, it's like a little chick or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's also started to sprout these dark hairs again. So he originally, his hair was dark brown. So if that's possible in someone over the age of 90,
right.
And I think you saw probably on my channel, you probably saw this photo. This woman is 79.
Oh, yes.
And so, that was after about 5 months of, taking this full spectrum polyamine product that we make, which is spermadine, spermine, and putrescine. And she just got this Alice band across the top, which she wasn't happy about because she said people would think she was vain and dyeing her hair. But it does show that the body can actually repigment, and it can renew itself, right? For me, when I see areas of high cellular turnover changing like that, then I'm asking myself, what's going on the inside? And if we think about the lining of the gut, which also requires high cellular turnover because it renews itself every 72 hours, personally, I'm wondering if there's a connection between the health of the gut and the health of the hair, skin, and nails. All 4 of these require very quick cellular turnover. And we do know that spermidine and spermine, that these polyamines do actually have a benefit on closing up the tight junctions of the gut and restoring integrity to the lining of the gut.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it sort of works, whereas zonulin would open up the tight junctions of the gut, spermidine will close those junctions.
Wow. So interesting.
And
so
that's
we have
why
a bunch.
with breast milk, it's important as well. Oh, sorry. So why there's, again, this great paper out of the University of Barcelona last year on the importance of polyamines in breast milk, because it seals up the nascent lining of the infant gut. And it also activates the immune system. And if they follow these babies that have been breastfed, they can see that they have a much lower incidence of allergies later because the immune cells in the gut lining have been activated. And another interesting thing from that was that mothers who were normal body weight have higher levels of these polyamines to help the babies. But women who are overweight have fewer of these polyamines to give to their babies.
So interesting, isn't it? It's wow. We have so many questions to get to.
Okay,
we have a bunch of questions from our patrons, but before that, so the patron questions are going to be available only for patron members. But before we do that, I want to let people know more about the spermidine product and everything you're doing at Oxford. So if they want to start going down this rabbit trail, I would just say start watching, just binge on some of your videos, which is what I did. I probably watched probably 60 or 70% of your videos. And that's where I would start. But tell people where they could go. I watch everything on double speed, so I get through content.
That's good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So you can find this trove of gray hair reversal videos on Leslie's New Prime on YouTube. So that's Leslie, Leslie, and then Leslie's New Prime for the new prime of life. And I'm also under that handle on Instagram, and I'm very active on Instagram. Then there's the Oxford Longevity Project.org, where you can find more information on autophagy and how clinicians are using it with different illnesses. And finally, there's the work that I do as founder and CEO of Oxford Healthspan. So if you go to Oxford Healthspan, like the span of a bridge.com, you'll find our spermadine products, and it's all food derived, all from Japan. I've just come back from Okinawa. I've just visited our farmers. I've just looked at the source, the source of our spring water, high up in the volcanic mountains of Okinawa, really clean. And you can find it all there, oxfordhealthspan.com.
Okay. So before, I didn't see that you actually have the powder. Is that a new product?
Yeah, that's a new product. And we had a lot of people. I don't know if you know Nadine Artemis from Living Libations. Yeah. So Nadine has been asking us for quite a while, what about just give me the powder? I don't want it in the capsules. I just want the powder. Yeah. and so of course I want to do everything I can, because she's quite the ethereal goddess, honor her wonderful ideas. And so we brought this powder out, but I wanted to have it in the right vessel to sort of keep it in. So I think I might even have one here. So I found these amazing, I've had one myself for, 2 decades, but these amazing Japanese cherry bark caddies. And the samurai, when they were essentially disbanded and told they couldn't fight anymore, they were looking for other ways to earn money. And they began to make these artisanal caddies to store tobacco, medicine, originally in, and then later tea. And this is what we are putting our Promolife powder in. So then you can just use it in your porridge. You can just add it to your smoothies. We have a bunch of recipes. We add it to dressing. We add it, I'll add it to matcha.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because it's got the powder has kind of a nutty taste to it. And this is the difference between food-derived spermadine and the synthetic spermadine. There is synthetic spermadine out there, but you don't get the cofactors. And it's a synthetic two-dimensional molecular mimic of spermadine, whereas the food is what we've co-evolved with. It's 3-dimensional. It has a taste. You can use it as a food. You can enjoy it as part of a daily ritual, throw it into your smoothie, sprinkle it on top of your cappuccino.
It doesn't taste like natto, does it?
No, thank goodness it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah.
Thank God. Oh man, I haven't, but I've smelt it before.
Yeah, it's got a strong smell, and the mouthfeel is not. People
not
don't
the
like
best.
Yeah, the feel is not. It's slimy and it's chunky. And
oh man.
Nice. Yeah.
So for other supplements, are you working on anything else before we get to the Patreon questions? Are you working on anything else down the line for Oxford Healthspan?
Yes, actually. So I mentioned I've just come back from Okinawa, where interestingly, people who are on the traditional Okinawan diet do not get gray hair very early at all.
Interesting.
And yeah, they have very thick hair. It stays dark for longer. And I can't reveal which molecules we're going after, but they will be food derived. And we will be bringing them out later this year. We did bring a second molecule out, which is nobilitin. It's another autophagy activator, and that comes from Okinawan lime. And that's why I was down visiting our lime farmers, who our particular farmer happens to be, he's 83 or 86.
Wow.
And yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And these limes grow the roots are crazy. They grow into the rock. So it's volcanic and coral. It's volcanic rock and coral together. And they dig their roots into it because it's porous. And they're just sucking these minerals out of this stone. It's amazing.
That's amazing.
So that was, that's in our gluten-free product as well. So that product has 3 autophagy activators: curcumin, nobiletin, and spermadine. And it has 3 anti-inflammatories. All 3 of them are anti-inflammatories. And nobiletin has been shown to help with sleep, for instance. It also has synephrine in it. The Okinawan lime has synephrine, which, speaking, with my Leslie's New Prime hat on, and as the granddaughter of someone who had glioblastoma, and you're the son of someone who had cancer.
So methylene blue is quickly becoming one of my favorite tools to use my overall health strategy and immune system strengthening. It's an amazing substance. It was first put together in 1876 by German scientist and chemist named Hendrik Caro. Later, it was used in the treatment of malaria by Paul Gutman and Paul Ehrlich in 1891. But then later it was synthesized into a popular drug that we can't talk about today, starting an I and ending in in. So what I love about it, though, is that it is an electron donor, electron acceptor, and an electron recycler. It helps to change the conformation of hemoglobin in the red blood cells so the hemoglobin can carry more oxygen to every single tissue in your body. And it also helps to clean up senescent cells. It increases mitochondrial biogenesis, increasing ATP production. It works as a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, increasing dopamine and serotonin. It's a nootropic. It's antimicrobial. It's an antidepressant. It's antioxidant, and therefore it's neuroprotective. And I like the company Lifeblood because it is a liquid tincture. And I usually use a small amount, like 1 or 2 drops per day. But then if I have some health challenge going on, like a cold or flu, I might do 20 to 30 drops in 1 ounce water 3 times a day. So I'll go heavy on the methylene blue. But what I also like is you can nebulize it too and get it into your lung tissue, or you could use it topically on your skin, although it will stain your skin. If this is interesting to you, check out the book called The Ultimate Guide to Methylene Blue by Mark Sloan. It'll blow your mind. Or you can listen to episode 731 by Adam Merifiotti from Lifeblood. So check out methylene blue, add it to your stack on today's show page or in our store, biochargeme.com, and the code EHR10 will get you a 10% discount.
It's very interesting for tumorigenesis, for inhibiting that.
Interesting. Golly. Wow. Okay. So listeners, if you are dealing with gray hair, it might be kind of fun to try to reverse it and see what you can do. And I would invite you, I'll put a link to Leslie's YouTube channel. I would just start there and also follow her on Instagram too. Start there and start watching some of her videos, and then you can get sort of more into her ecosystem there, and you can learn more about what she's doing. On my notes for today, I have topical melatonin for alopecia, progesterone, electrons, antioxidants, glutathione, NAC. I wanted to get your thoughts on copper, melanin, where hydrogen peroxide is created, polyunsaturated fatty acids. I had so many things dim on my notes, but maybe we'll do this again because we could just go forever, Okay,
I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do that. You've got some really great, some really great things to touch on. And I take NAC, I take DIM, I take liposomal glutathione from Japan. Mm-hmm. Copper, I take raw cacao almost every single day. So I'm going to have some copper in there. These are all good things.
There's a really good video for those that are listening on her channel about her top supplements and stuff like that too. So you can check that out. Okay, do you want to tackle kind of rapid fire some of these Patreon questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. I don't want to keep you too long, but I'm just going to read sort of the subject matter and then we'll go back into the first one. So we got one on B12 shots versus oral, the top 3 causes of aging, Accutane, which you kind of touched on a little bit, chemotherapy, hair dyes. We talked a little bit about that before we recorded. Gray hair on different areas of the body, wheatgrass juice, liver health, how long does it take to see results, and skin health. So let's start with the first one. Let's see. That is from Sean Nemi, I think it is. Does Leslie think after a certain age it's important to get B12 injections versus taking it orally? Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Leslie, thanks so much for coming on. This was so much fun. And we barely, like I said, I have notes up the wazoo that we didn't even get to, but I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, it was really fun. I'd love to do it again. I think your work is really important. And we're children, grandchildren of cancer survivors. And we have seen the sharp end of the medical stick, as I like to say it. And there is a role for holistic and integrative health here. And I'm so pleased when I see practitioners begin to move towards this and think about things like prevention, but also wraparound care. Okay, well, you're doing chemo, try the melatonin too, right?
I love that.
Well done on all the work you've done and the body of knowledge you've created here.
Thank you. And also for those that are listening, check out oxfordhealthspan.com and follow Leslie's New Prime. It's LESLIES, right? On Instagram, Leslie's New Prime. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'll pause the video, but I really appreciate you coming on, Leslie.
Likewise.
All right, there you go. Episode 768 in the books with Leslie's New Prime, Leslie Kenny. Really cool, right? So we just got wrapped up. We talked for maybe 20 minutes off the air about things that are going on in the world. And you know what I always find so interesting too? With people who know about health and they're, I guess the right word is enlightened, or they're awakened, or whatever the case may be, whatever language you want to put on that. People like that seem to understand really the deeper things about what's going on in the world. The people that are clueless to all of it are people that are just normies and their diet is just standard American diet. They're on all these medications and they're just completely bought into the matrix. Every person that I know that works on their health, tries to get healthier, takes care of themselves, every one of those people seem to understand what's actually going on in the world. So that was really refreshing to talk with Leslie off the air. We do have, I forgot to mention this, but we do have a coupon code if you're interested in trying any of her products. And I think it's for 10 or 15% off. It may be EHR 10 or EHR 15, maybe. Try either one of those, and I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to try some of her products. But really what I would do is I would subscribe to her YouTube channel and start watching her videos, because her videos are really good and they're really science-based and research-based, which is really nice to see. And she really has a great way of explaining the research and talking about the anecdotal stories of how this research applies to people in their daily life. And so one of the things that I mentioned during the show, this is funny. So I actually had so much to talk with her about, like electrons, antioxidants. We didn't even get into that, and how antioxidants require electrons to operate and to work, because antioxidants donate their electrons to pro-oxidants, and then they can become an oxidant, a pro-oxidant, in the process of losing one of their electrons. So there's a lot of people that say, instead of focusing on bringing in more antioxidants, you should also pair that with bringing in more free electrons into the body. And, how do we do that? Well, we do that through grounding, through being in nature. There's lots of different ways to get electrons from nature. You can do it through nature-based tactics, and you can do it through sort of biohacking tools and stuff like that. Right now, I'm using a tool called the electron charger. There's a device that you can put your feet on and get electrons that way. And then you can also get a portable device as well. But we didn't even talk about progesterone, NAC, glutathione and catalase, and how they're made in the liver and the liver support, and copper and superoxide dismutase, melanin and chaga tea, and creating more melanin in the skin through light frequencies, UVA or UV, let's see, B in the morning, and IR light in the morning to help create melanin. Morley Robbins has done actually a lot of work on melanin and his work and minerals and stuff. We didn't even talk about polyunsaturated fatty acids and how they play a role in the oxidative process. And those typically come from seed oils or vegetable oils, and they are long chain molecules that lose hydrogen, and the hydrogen bond becomes broken, and they become a pro-oxidant once inside a body that's filled with light, heat, and oxygen, which is what human beings are, right? We have photoreceptors on our skin, and we have photoreceptors in our gut to capture light, photons of light. And then our bodies are 98.6 tropical environment, and we breathe oxygen, right? So when you put an unstable oil into an environment like that, no matter how the oil is made or stabilized or prepared, or how the oil is stored even, it's going to cause an oxidative effect. So we didn't even talk about that. We talked a little bit about autophagy. That was cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And we didn't talk about molecular hydrogen or stress in the adrenals. But I hope you enjoyed the show. So I think really what my sort of goal is, and my aim here is, we can't cover every topic on every show, and we can't answer every question on every show. What my main goal is to be sort of like a signpost and tell you guys, like, hey, if you have this condition, research these terms, look at these websites, look at these people, read these books, watch these videos, and just be kind of a director of information, right? So, like, for example, with glioblastomas, I would look at the anti-neoplastons from Dr. Brzezinski in Houston, Texas. I would look at the products by Dr. Mirko Beljanski that have really good effects on glioblastomas. So, I can't answer every question about those, but I can say, hey, go look over there and look at the research they've done and get into their material. And that way you can learn more. And I think what I was talking with Leslie about after the show was, what bothers me the most is how much people are just living under a spell. Like, they're just seduced by the mainstream media and by medical doctors to not really know there's other options out there for healing and for prevention. And so what I was telling her, and it's just like, if you want to go get the sharp thing because you're afraid of this big C little v floating through the air and overtaking your body, if you're scared of that, then go get the sharp thing, right? I'm not going to tell you what to do. But what I'm saying is that you shouldn't get the sharp thing if you haven't read the research on high-dose ascorbic acid IV therapy or ultraviolet blood irradiation therapy, or if you don't know or have read the books on ozone therapy and big C little v infections. Because the information is out there, and you don't need those things. You can go get these alternative treatments, and they work better than the mainstream. And so, but if you want to get the mainstream, that's fine. And we all have to deal with the consequences of our actions, right? But just have informed consent. But see, that's the thing, is you can't have informed consent when you're trying to push something down people's throats or get it in their arms. You can't have that. And so that's why you see these crazy incentivization. How do you say that? Incentivized plans, to pay people, to give people hamburgers, lap dances. I mean, geez, really? If this thing were as bad as everyone says it is, how come you're, telling people that they'll get a free lap dance if they go get this thing, or a $100 Amazon gift card, or a hamburger, fries, and Coke? Like, really? That should be enough right there to say, these people are just, they don't know what they're talking about, and they're just pulling the wool over your eyes. They're just lying to you. So anyway, informed consent. Everyone gets to make their own choices, and I'm a full advocate of that. But just have the knowledge and say, even in the face of all this information about ozone or IV vitamin C, I'm going to go get the sharp thing, and that's fine. Do that, but don't do those things without knowing what your other options are, or without looking at other people aside from mainstream medical doctors or Dr. Falsey, telling you his BS. Look at the research and actually read information. And then you can make an informed choice. And I guarantee you 99% of people that look at the information that's available would not go with the Sharp thing first. If they truly knew what their options were and the power of those other options, if they truly knew those options, they wouldn't do that. And they know that, which is why they're trying to suppress all the information and, stuff like our show. So anyway, I kind of divulge and kind of digress a bit, but this is episode 768. So what I'll do is I'll put a link if you're watching this on YouTube or Rumble or Brighteon, whatever. I'm really liking Brighteon, by the way. But if you're watching this on those other video platforms, in the description below, there should be some links for you. And so there'll be links to everything that we talked about, or most of the things, and the coupon code if you want to try her products. But also our Patreon as well. So make sure to join that if you really want to get on the inside of my research and get access to all of the best protocols that I'm putting together every month for our patron members. So make sure to join that. And if you're listening on a podcast, I'll try to put everything in the show notes so you can, click over and follow her on Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that. So extremehealthradio.com/768. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please share it with a friend, pass it on. I would really appreciate that. And thank you for watching, and we'll catch you guys on next week's episode.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse of this information.